How are we doing, everyone? And welcome into the second of 3 episodes that I'm posting here on Monday morning for Week 8 fantasy football. It's early. We're still finishing up those Week 7 matchups. We're trying to get ahead of the curve and get some additional work done for our teams at the top of this week so we can continue to bolster our rosters. In this episode, I'll be talking 5 wide receivers that I am prioritizing as trade targets here as we approach Week 8 action, because I think long-term this season, their value and productivity is going to continue to trend upwards from the point that they're at right now or have been producing recently due to some down performances or whatever the case may be. So with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's hit the intro and jump straight in to today's video. One more quick announcement before we get into today's video is that for those of you who are looking to be able to have more access to me as a fantasy tool and be able to interact with me more on a personal level with your own teams, SFS Gold is our exclusive membership service here on the channel, and there's a way for each and every single one of you watching today's video to get a free month-long membership to SFS Gold completely free and on us by checking out one of our partners of the channel right now, ThriveFantasy.com. They've got an app for your mobile devices, or obviously head over to their website. That'll be linked in the description of today's video. By heading over to Thrive, signing up with a new account, and when you deposit $10 all the way up to $100 using promo code SIZZLE, they will give you a 100% deposit match. So if you put in $25, they'll give you another $25 to play with for a total of $50 to play with on their app. It's a really fun DFS style of fantasy football where you're playing with player props. You're just picking over or under for individual players in given matchups, or even comparing two players from one team and picking one or the other with some various advantages and bonus boosts for some of those players depending on who's favored to have more rushing yards or receiving yards, for example. But when you go over, play on Thrive, deposit using promo code SIZZLE, and play in a matchup, they're going to let me know within a 24-hour period that you've signed up using my promo code. And when they do that, I'm going to go ahead and work with you to create your SFS account on our website, sizzlefantasy.com. And then I'll be granting you a free month-long membership to SFS Gold, where you'll have access to pick my brain about all your fantasy questions, and I'll even help set your lineup for you on a week-to-week basis. So go check out Thrive Fantasy. Again, deposit using promo code SIZZLE, SIZZLE, and we'll get in contact with you, figure out how to set up your SFS Gold account with you, and figure out what works best with you going forward this season to help you pick up as many wins as possible this year. But there we go. For those of you who have already seen that, I'm sorry today. We're pushing that really hard right now as we want to get a lot of players over on Thrive's account, or on their platform, and get a lot of accounts set up here and a lot of new members headed their way. So Calvin Ridley is our first must-buy wide receiver candidate for Week 8 action. This one has been repetitive over the course of the season so far this year. He just keeps getting volume, passes thrown his way, opportunities in this Atlanta offense. The dude's a stud. We know that. He finished as a wide receiver 4 last year, and he keeps finding ways to put up really respectable floor numbers. He just still has continually not tapped into his fantasy ceiling, and that he hasn't done it once this year. He's hit his floor basically every game he's played, but the ceiling has been non-existent to this point in the year. So you're getting steady Eddie numbers, and you're just not quite getting those boom production performances from the 2020 season that helped him finish at that wide receiver 4 spot. So that's really caused his trade value and his overall price to drop significantly, though. I mean, I've seen some trades in the comment sections for Calvin Ridley where we're trading him like a bag of chips. Go out and get this guy. There's no reason not to target him. He's seen 10 or more targets in 4 of his 5 games this year, and his least targeted performance was 8. 8 passes thrown your way is a great marker to be at for a lot of wide receivers in this league. The fact that he's getting that at minimum in each of his 5 starts this year. Now, he missed 1 game in London due to personal reasons. But man, take advantage of this opportunity while it's still there. Just like we saw A.J. Brown do this week, where his numbers were very below par and expectation level. He broke through the surface this week, had his breakout game against the Chiefs, and now we're off to the races. A.J. Brown's fine. We can take a sigh of relief. That's going to happen with Calvin Ridley. I'm almost sure of it. He's too talented. His team is too dependent on passing the football. Their run game is not all that great. he is going to emerge, and finally him and Matt Ryan are going to connect on one of those deep passing opportunities. He found the end zone this week, which was miraculous. He only had 4 grabs for 26 yards, but again, 10 targets is what we're more interested in here. The production will come. The results will come here after time. It's been a lot of time, 5 weeks. You've got over a month of production and opportunity sitting there. But sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to click, and that's been the case for this team this year with no Julio Jones. So I expect Calvin Ridley to bounce back, get on track here, and be productive down the stretch. DJ Moore, plagued by bad quarterback play, but still another player who has been absolutely peppered in targets this fantasy season. His target share is unbelievable, even in comparison to what he did last season. He was out-targeted by Robbie Anderson last year, and this year they look like they're in 2 completely separate universes in terms of the opportunities that each of them are getting. Sam Darnold locks in on DJ Moore and throws him pass after pass after pass, and he got pulled for was PJ Walker in that game against the Giants this week. It was brutal. He looked awful, inaccurate, indecisive with his decision-making. It was brutal. I had, honestly, Sam Darnold the first 3 weeks to Sam Darnold the following 3 weeks is like night and day. And honestly, at this point, maybe Sammy's not all that great. Maybe he's not quite what we hoped he could be. I think the raw talent's there, but he's a little bit too reckless. Who knows? He's pretty athletic, led the league in rushing touchdowns like the first 3 games. Maybe we need a little position change for Sam because the accuracy of passes isn't quite there. It's a joke for those of you who can't tell that. But DJ Moore deserves better. He needs a real quarterback. The volume is something that I think that will help him overcome these struggles, though. And despite the fact that he's not the most productive player on a week-to-week basis on a consistency standpoint because of this, it's no different than even a Terry McLaurin who is being laser focused in on by his quarterbacks. And even though Taylor Heineke can't consistently deliver him productive games on a week-to-week basis, the target share is still so excellent and the player is so talented that they've got all the potential in the world on a week-to-week basis to come out here and have a boom performance. So when DJ Moore's target floor, just like a Calvin Ridley, has been 7 or more in every contest this season, that's something I love to see. Again, even if he's not getting the best opportunities with each rep, even if each pass isn't hitting him perfectly in the target triangle for a wide receiver, that's okay because he's a playmaker. He's good enough to make up the difference in given matchups. He's still producing respectable yardage. You'd love to see him find the end zone more. You'd love to see him connect more consistently on passes when he's open because he's been missed on some pretty big plays, but that's okay. I'm confident in DJ Moore. I think that even with Sam Darnold's struggles, he's still been named the starting quarterback by Matt Rule moving down the stretch this year. He said that despite the quarterback change and the benching, he is their starter moving forward. Sam will hopefully trend backwards to his first 3-week performance. The more that he's able to settle in, familiarize himself, with this offense and become more. I think, honestly, at this point, it would play better to DJ Moore's advantage if Sam spread the ball out a little bit more. He locks in on DJ so hard that it makes it really easy for the defense to pinpoint him as the focal attack of this offense, especially with no Christian McCaffrey on the field. Once he returns, this team becomes a little bit more balanced. I think we might see things head back in a positive direction, and hopefully from there, DJ Moore can get back to the top 10 wide receiver production numbers we were seeing from him over the first month of this fantasy season. How about Brandin Cooks? This is an interesting one for me here. I went back and forth, weighing the pros and the cons, and right now, the trend has been since Tyrod Taylor's injury, Brandin Cooks' production has fallen off a little bit here, but this is still a player who's seeing a lot of volume, a lot of opportunities. The game script is falling in a manner that's very favorable to the wide receiver position, particularly because the Houston Texans are getting absolutely flattened in a lot of their games this year. That opens the door wide open for them to be passing late, getting garbage, empty calorie yards. There's no chance for them to win this football game, but that's okay because Brandin Cooks can come out here and get 50 or 60 more yards in the fourth quarter when DBs are playing 15 yards off the ball and just letting you play underneath routes. So that still matters for fantasy. Even though Brandin Cooks is not producing yards in meaningful downs of football, he's still getting the raw yardage for us in fantasy, and that's what we'd like to see. The first 2 weeks when Tyrod Taylor was healthy and he was putting up numbers early on this season, those two were excellent. Tyrod was throwing passes downfield in connecting with Brandin Cooks in a way that I don't think a lot of us expected this season. I was very high on Brandin Cooks at his draft price in the draft season process because of the clear number one target share I expected him to have in this offense. But still, moving forward here, Tyrod Taylor's return from injury is looming. Every week he gets a little bit closer, and hopefully within the next 2 games, worst case scenario, he can get back out there. David Culley said that he's probably not going to play his first week that he's able to start because they want to get him out there on the practice field and suited up in a comfortable fashion so he's actually ready to play that game. But Davis Mills has not been able to turn Cooks' numbers into the same production that Tyrod was able to early on in the year. So when you give me a player with the talent level of Brandin Cooks, though, with the deep playmaking ability of Brandin Cooks, the speed, the explosiveness, the game script scenarios that the Houston Texans will be playing from, this is a situation that could become a very low buy. And if you can even get him in a situation where he's your flex player, his upside makes that potentially the difference in your matchups on a week-to-week basis, because if Tyrod comes back in this offense and we see those numbers trend back to where they were early on this season, that's a game changer for teams, and this is a player who I think has a lot of talent. And again, going back to that game script, that's an incredibly valuable asset to have for a fantasy team. Garbage time yards matter for fantasy. Empty calorie points matter. A touchdown down by 30 in the fourth quarter still means as much as a touchdown going up 6 in the first. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. Brandin Cooks is a player I'd go out and make a run for at a respectable and low price because he's not a premier fantasy wide receiver, but he's got some very real lineup value for us. Antonio Brown for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another player I'm loving buying this week. Sat out in week 7 because of injury, didn't suit up and play against the Chicago Bears. That's perfectly fine by me. The injury lowers his trade stock a little bit, and then you look at Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. There's a scenario here for some fantasy leagues that AB owners are going to panic a little bit. Look at the numbers. Gronk was out of the game. Antonio Brown out of the game. It's very obvious that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were going to have to step up in this contest. And when you're playing a Chicago Bears defense that's so weak in the secondary, in particular at the boundary corner positions, I'm not shocked at all that those two went out there, balled out, and had, 4 touchdowns between the 2 wide receivers. Try and capitalize on a little bit of fear being injected into the situation for AB owners, even Gronk owners. If you want to go make a run for Gronk, who is putting up ridiculous tight end stats early on in the season, you can do that as well. But Antonio Brown, prior to this week, was the most targeted player on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster since he was acquired by the team in the middle of last season. He's one of Tom's favorite targets. He's got the explosive downfield playmaking ability to produce boom numbers on a week-to-week basis, and this is a situation I love. So even if the trade price is only impacted a little bit here, this is a player who I see as a top 24 fantasy option moving forward the rest of the way. And the more you're able to go out and make these trade offers to get these players at lower prices, the higher your long-term upside will be in potentially hauling some of these players back into your own team. So AB, someone I'm super interested in offering for this week. And then finally, Keenan Allen here. Keenan's a player who has been pretty underwhelming, sort of Calvin Ridley-esque for the majority of this season. And a lot of that is played into the production that Mike Williams is having, and in particular in the red zone. He's got 6 touchdowns on the year. They're just coming off of a bye week now here in week 8. They'll be entering against the Patriots here. Keenan's been seeing the targets. He's been seeing passes thrown his way. He's made some spectacular catches, very impressive toe drag grabs. But the upside has not been at play this year because of the emergence of Mike Williams so far this season. But I think after the bye here, moving forward down the stretch, things will balance themselves out just a little bit. Mike Williams has been such an extreme that it's 20-plus points or 4. Keenan Allen's been more of steady Eddie, just kind of producing very mild and bland numbers. He's been kind of hovering between that 10 to 12 point marker in half PPR scoring. Now, he did have one of his worst games of the season when the Ravens absolutely stomped the Chargers out in week 6. It was at 41-6 was the final score, I believe. But I think that the rest of the way this year, seeing how this offense and the trajectory that it had coming into the season following last, they're going to spread the ball out. they can't afford to lock into one option like they've been doing so far this season, because we've seen what's happened here when they do just zone all in on Mike Williams, or they go all for Austin Eckler in a given game. They get into a situation where when the going gets tough and Justin Herbert is faced with pressure, they take away his favorite option. He has to go somewhere else with the football. So I think this team as a whole needs to do a better job of spreading the ball out. Now, that might not be the direct key to Keenan Allen's fantasy success, but what will be is his route running, his target share, the fact that Mike Williams' touchdown count has been so high, and yes, that is his skill set and that is his nature to score on those plays, but Keenan Allen's touchdown production has also been excessively low. And so while Mike Williams might be an outlier in the high touchdown department, Keenan Allen's one score this year is a bit of an outlier on the other side of the spectrum. So I think that combined, those two numbers in the passing game will even out and balance a little bit here. I think Allen's yardage production will increase. His volume will stay the same in terms of passes thrown his way, because Mike Williams is going to get his. Let's not make any questions or concerns about that. But I think overall, the extremes we're seeing from these two different wide receivers, of Mike Williams being up here or way down and bottomed out, and Keenan Allen just kind of steadily being below a level of his expectations that we drafted him at, I think those things will kind of even out and balance out here down the stretch. We'll see Mike Williams' highs come down just a little bit, but we'll also see Keenan Allen's lows rise up a bit. And in turn, I think that'll make him maybe not a top 12 wide receiver option anymore this season, but at the very least, a very top-end wide receiver too. So Keenan's a player I'd go out and make an offer for. He can give you very consistent lineup numbers. I like adding him to my team here in Week 8. All right, those are my 5 must-buy wide receivers for Week 8 action here. Remember to go check out Thrive Fantasy. Use promo code SIZZLE. They'll match whatever you deposit up to $100. And once you've played a game, they will let me know, and I'll go in there and get you set up with your free month of SFS Gold, so you can get direct access to me. Ask me your fantasy questions. I'll set your lineups for you again, and you'll get access to my weekly positional rankings. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Go check out some of the other videos we posted today, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.